Light. Oh, all right.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. Jazakumullah khairan for taking time out and joining us today. To start off with and to begin with some blessed recitation of the Quran. We have Brother Ruhul Alam, alhamdulillah, who's traveled from another part of London to join us, and inshallah he's going to recite some verses for us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء والله واسع عليم. الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. قول معروف ومغفرة خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى والله غني حليم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى كالذي ينفق ماله رئاء الناس ولا يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر
فمثله كمثل صفوان عليه تراب فأصابه وابل فتركه صلدا لا يقدرون على شيء مما كسبوا والله لا يهدي القوم الكافرين الذين ينفقون أموالهم ابتغاء مرضات الله وتثبيتا من أنفسهم كمثل جنة بربوة أصابها وابل فآتت أكلها ضعفين فإن لم يصبها وابل فطل والله بما تعملون بصير.
After this, inshallah, we have a young brother of ours, Brother Shaykh Ahmed, who is going to perform some spoken word poetry, which is basically, it's a poem with a very deep meaning, inshallah. So I'm going to ask you a bit. Poems, they're written by Shaykh himself, and inshallah he's going to read them to us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair for coming today. Jazakallah khair for having me over. Inshallah, so as one of the things said, my name is Shaykh Hassan. I'm a full-time student at Ibrahim College, but on the side I do write a few poems. So inshallah, I'm going to be sharing like one or two of them today. So the first one is something that I wrote actually quite a number of years back, but it's something which still relates to today, and it's still something which I feel that I still need to act upon, inshallah. It's a message that I like to send out to everyone, especially the youth, because this poem that I've written is about a very small action, but it has a massive effect on not only yourself but on everyone else. And this action is also a sunnah, and this action is the action of smiling. So this poem is called Keep Smiling. Inshallah, I'll explain a bit more about why I wrote this poem as well after I perform sunnah. You see, sometimes you think to yourself, why me for? Sometimes you sit there and go through these deep thoughts. I couldn't agree more. We go through hard times. There's ups and downs in this life like a seesaw. No one's life is full of happiness and laughter. Not everyone has a happily ever after. It's a fact of life that we go through hard times. We'll always be tested by God during our lives. I know how you feel. I used to feel the same, but I smiled when I could and I got through the pain. Remember that along with every hardship comes ease, and after every problem and suffering comes peace. My life was messed, but this life's a test. I remember the times when I used to feel depressed. I remember the times when my feelings were crushed. But smiling every day for me now is a must. Smile when you sleep and smile when you wake up. A smile on your face is really the best makeup. The problems keep piling, but you gotta keep smiling. Forget the dark clouds and the sun will keep shining. Sometimes it feels like the world is against you. Sometimes it seems like you can't find a way through. And sometimes you're down, and I can't even blame you. But putting you down is all part of Satan's plan. Turn to God now and raise your hands. There's no guarantee, so pray today. Problems keep coming, but they'll fade away. We're human beings, we make clear mistakes, we're not here to stay, so wipe your tears away. This life is short, you've got to make it worthwhile, and don't let anyone ever take away that smile. A smile is a sunnah, so smile at the ummah. The problems keep coming, but you smile in this dunya. A smile is worthwhile, we'll be smiling forever. Whatever the weather, we'll be smiling together. Smile at your sister and smile at your brother. A smile is free, so we should smile at each other. Smile at your mother and smile at your father. Imagine if we had to spend a night up in Gaza. Feel like complaining? You better stop right there. Go spend a night there. It will be a nightmare. So many suffering all over the globe. Children out there live life on their own. Children are dying. We complain that we can't sleep. Blind to the facts, and it's not that we can't see. Children are suffering, yet they're down hardly. If they can smile, then the question is, why can't we? Jazakallah khairan. So that was my first poem. That was called Keep Smiling. So again, I wrote this poem mainly as a reminder to myself and to the youth to keep this sunnah alive of smiling. And also I drew the parable of the people in Gaza. Because obviously you see the people in Gaza, you have children who have lost their parents. You have parents who have lost their children. But you would still see on the faces of these people, you still see them smiling. And not because they're not upset, it's because they have contentment in their heart. And they know that, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory and will give them the best in this life and the next. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us all smiling. And may He grant victory to the people in Gaza and to those around the Muslim world. Inshallah, I'll just do one more poem. And this one is called Same Yet Different. And this is mainly related to the subject of sort of unity. So inshallah, without any further delay, I'll go ahead. Bismillah. We're all the same, yet we're all different. If we're different, we're original. If we're original, we can make things happen. If it happens, we can be thankful. If we're thankful, we can obtain. If we obtain, we can live. If we live, we can speak. If we speak, we should do. And if we do, we should do right. If we do right, it's harder to go wrong. If we go wrong, we should seek help. If we help, we can become stronger. If we're stronger, we can do more. If we do more, we should be sincere. If we're sincere, we can succeed. If we succeed, we can go higher. If we go higher, it's easier to fall. And if we fall, we can get back up. If we get back up, we do it together. If we do it together, we can create peace. If there's peace, we can put together the pieces. And when we put it together, it all makes sense. If it makes sense, we can see the truth. If we see the truth, we can listen to it. If we listen, we can learn. If we learn, we can educate. If we educate, we can rise. And if we rise, no one can stop us. If we stop, we can prepare to fail. If we fail, we fail to prepare. And if we prepare, we can build. If it's built, we've left foundations. If there's foundations, the youth will benefit. If they benefit, they can do the same. If they do the same, then they can settle the differences. If we settle down, we can forget our past. And if we pass on knowledge, we can pass on light. And if we take it lightly, then we've made a mistake. And if we've made a mistake, then we're only human. And if we're human, then you are my brother. And if we're human, then you are my sister. And if you're my brother, and if you're my sister, then it means we're all the same. Because at the end of the day, we're all the same, yet we're all different. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah, without any further ado, I'm going to ask and invite Maulana Shamsul Taha to, inshallah, start his speech. Alhamdulillah, we're very lucky for having this event and for Maulana accepting our invitation. I know he's extremely busy with many things, and taking this time out has been very difficult, and we're very grateful for that. We appreciate that. Also, in our humble masjid, it's something new and rare, so we're lucky to have this. So we hope that things like this continue and happen more often, inshallah. So inshallah, I'm going to hand over the mic to you, and so I think I should do the full introduction. This is Maulana Shams Duha Muhammad. He's director of Ibrahim College, which is where Shifi studies, and alhamdulillah is doing a great job in the east of London, serving the people of London, alhamdulillah. Maulana was once upon a time an imam in East London also, and he does many things. You might have seen him on BBC Newsnight, you might have seen him on something with Islam channel, okay, which is question and answers on that, and many other things which would be difficult for me to list here, to be honest. But alhamdulillah, like I said, we're very lucky to have him. And also, throughout the month of Ramadan, Maulana has been very busy, trying his best to do whatever he can for the people of Gaza, okay, which is all of our duties, alhamdulillah. So he's going to share some of his thoughts with us, inshallah, and I want
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله تعالى وسلم على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن تنصروا الله ينصركم ويثبت أقدامكم. وقال النبي صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم: من كان في حاجة أخيه كان الله في حاجته. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم. So brothers, it's a pleasure to be here. Jazakumullah khairan for having me. I'm going to share some thoughts, inshallah, on I think the Ummah in general, but specifically with Gaza and other difficult crisis in mind, and I'll try and mix Bangla and English with it, inshallah. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam has said many things and done many things that have taught us that that Muslims are a national, and remember that national, the word national is a modern word, right? So we are, in terms of old school terminology, we are pan-tribal, pan-racial, and nowadays pan-national. So irrespective of borders, colors, races, nationalities, we are a global brotherhood. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in his final sermon, one of his final sermons in his farewell Hajj, in Hajj al-Wada', said that there is no virtue of the white person over the black person, or of any other color or race for that matter, over another, and that virtue only exists in terms of taqwa. And this, of course, isn't something that the Messenger of Allah said alone, but he was simply reiterating the importance of one of the most important verses of the Quran on this topic, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu, inna akramakum 'inda Allahi atqakum. That, O people, we have created you into nations and tribes, and so we've created you from a man and a woman, and have made you into nations and tribes, so that you may recognize one another. And indeed, the most noble among you is the one who is most pious, the one who is most conscious of Allah, the one who has the most taqwa. He is the most noble among you. And therefore, our whether it's a traditional notion of nationhood or a modern notion of nationhood, any form of nation identity, any form of national identity, any form of racial identity, any form of color-based identity, black, white, etc. All of these things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares to us, have nothing to do with who is better and who is worse. But they are simply part of human nature in terms of the way we were born. Meaning that we were born of a man and a woman, Adam and Hawa alayhim as-salam. And it was part of their genetics that gave us the legacy of colors. And it was part of the way in which we as a human race evolved over time, that we have split into different groups and families and tribes. And we have moved from one place to another place, from one region to another region, from one country to another country, and have developed distinct identities. But these identities have nothing to do with who is better, who is worse. The only person who is better than another is based on the quality of taqwa. If a person has taqwa and he is black, he is better than the white person who has no taqwa, and vice versa. And vice versa. There is no superiority. There is no default superiority except based upon taqwa. And this is the principle of a global brotherhood of people that really, first and foremost, even before deen, even before establishing the principle of a religious brotherhood, establishes a human brotherhood, a human equality that only distinguishes people based on virtue, based on piety. It does not distinguish people based on race, based on any other form of identity. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reiterating this in his farewell sermon, right, tells us that this is something that we must uphold, and if we do not, there will be destruction. If you look at the things that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us at the end of his life, there are things that he repeated again and again and again at the end of his life, particularly in his final Hajj. Those things are things that, of course, have been taught before. They have been mentioned in verses of the Quran. They have been mentioned in a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so on. But he repeated them again towards the end of his life, right? To tell us that these things are extremely important. And if we do not uphold these things, we stand to collectively suffer. We stand to suffer collectively. So the issue of racism, for example, right? The issue of brotherhood across all different identities, right? Across all the different distinctions and divides that we construct in our minds, right? Across all of that, brotherhood is important. And if we do not allow that to become a core of our identity and of our thinking, then we will suffer as a result. The Prophet ﷺ, towards the end of his life, raised the issue of interest. Raised the issue of interest. And he repeated the teachings with regards to interest. Because in his mind, although he had already been mentioned in the Quran, he re-emphasized it because the Prophet ﷺ was trying to say that it's destructive. And what's fascinating about these last teachings of the Messenger ﷺ is that they are destructive for the world generally, not just for the Muslims. They're destructive for the world generally. That the world will suffer. That most of the world will suffer. Interest became the backbone of exploitation. Has always been, and in this day and age, after the Prophet ﷺ, the more people dealt in interest, the more a minority of people became wealthy, and the majority of the world was left exploited and in poverty. Both in terms of population, but also in terms of land and demographics. So you have pollution affecting some places more than other places, because the wealthy exploits the poor. And this exploitation is facilitated usually by interest. The Prophet ﷺ, towards the end of his life, he emphasized the issue of the treatment of women. Right? And constantly repeated, that make sure you treat women properly. And this was something that wasn't just for the Muslims, but globally, that if men exploit and take advantage of women and they abuse them, then globally there will be problems. There will be problems. And if you think about it, globally the world is suffering because of the effects of feminism. And feminism was born out of the oppression of women. But because now that it is born, it has resulted ultimately and most significantly in the breakdown of the family. In the breakdown of the family. The Messenger ﷺ, towards the end of his life, some of his final teachings, in fact, just before he passed away, some of his last words were to tell us to take our salah importantly and give importance to all those that our hands control, that our right hands control. And that includes everybody that we have authority over. The Prophet ﷺ, that was his, pretty much some of the final words of the Messenger ﷺ. That if you exploit and abuse and mistreat people who are under you, whether they are people you have authority over, whether they are your employees, whether they are your children or anybody really, you exploit them, then you essentially create the same problem that racism creates. Right? Almost every single one of these teachings is to do with exploitation. Racism results in the exploitation and the abuse of one race against another. Interest does the same thing. The abuse of women, one gender over another, right? Does the same thing. The abuse of employees and people that we control, same thing. Anyway, that's not the topic of what I want to talk about, but this is important because if we are going to have an understanding of our identity that goes beyond me, that goes beyond myself, then we have to understand these principles, right? A man at the head of a family, as a husband and a father, the only way he is a true leader, he is a true man, responsible for family, a true husband, a true father, is if his identity isn't hinged on himself. If everything doesn't depend on himself, everything isn't about him, it isn't about his work, but more about the people he is responsible for. كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ told us that all of you is a responsible person. And all of you will be asked on the Day of Judgment about the people that you are responsible for. So this idea of a global brotherhood, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, indeed all of the believers are but brothers. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. So reconcile. Anytime any problem happens between your brothers, make sure that your attitude is one of reconciliation, of helping to make the situation right. Right? The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that the example of the believers in their compassion for one another, in their attitude of mercy towards one another, is like the example of one body. If one part of that body suffers from some kind of a problem, an injury, an illness or something like that, then the rest of the body, it shows solidarity by not being able to sleep at night and by suffering fever. If you have an infection on your finger, your whole body has fever, right? If you have some sort of injury, you don't feel the pain just here, but rather your whole body suffers. Just because you have a problem in one part of your body doesn't mean that the rest of your body is going to sleep at night. But the rest of it is also stressed out, can't sleep at night. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that the whole of the ummah is like a building. The way one part of a building, like the pillars of a building support the bricks, and the bricks support one another, this is how the ummah is, that we support one another. And based on this is how as an ummah we have to understand crisis. Right? This ummah was always going to be an ummah of many, many people. We are 1.7 billion people now, 25% of the world, right? Because the Messenger ﷺ is the greatest messenger. He is Allah's greatest messenger ﷺ, and he was the final messenger. So his ummah is the greatest ummah. And the Messenger ﷺ told us that you should marry women who can have lots of children. Why? Because on the Day of Judgment I will boast about your numbers. I will boast about your numbers, right? That means on the Day of Judgment, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will have the largest ummah. So we will always be a large ummah. And therefore we will be spread out over many different lands. We will be many different races and colors. If you go to Hajj, Every single racial type is there around the Haram, right? Every type. You know, we have black, we have white, we have Oriental, we have Middle Eastern, we have South Asian, right? We have every mix, right? We have Caucasian, every single type, all the typologies basically are represented. This is the nature of this ummah. And therefore this ummah is doomed to collapse if the ummah identifies itself based on these races. If the ummah doesn't feel pain when one part of it is suffering, then the ummah is doomed to collapse. The other thing about this ummah is that the ummah's circumstances will also differ. Some will be in comfort, others will be in difficulty. Some will be in wealth, others will be in poverty. This is the natural order of the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَكُمْ خَلَائِفَ الْأَرْضِ وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَكُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ. That He is Allah who has made you custodians of the earth. خُلَفَاء عَلَى الْأَرْضِ. Right? The earth is where we represent Allah. We represent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says, He has elevated some of you over others in degrees. Right? Some are rich, some are poor. Right? Some are one color, some are one race, others are another race. Some are powerful, some are weak. Some are weak. Some, you know, you have people who are at government level, other people who are ordinary subjects. Right? You have millionaires, you have billionaires, you have ordinary people. This is Allah tells us this is normal. This is how it is supposed to be. He has given some degrees over others. Why? لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ. So that He can test you in what He gave you. So Allah gave everything. To the rich person He gave money. He is testing him in what He gave him. He is testing him with His money. To the poor person Allah gave difficulty. Allah gave difficulty. And He is testing him with that difficulty. To the ill person, the sick person, somebody with a disability from birth, Allah gave him that disability. And He is testing him with that disability. To the madloom, Allah gave him a situation of dhulm, like the people of Gaza. Allah gave them a situation of dhulm, and Allah tests them in that situation of dhulm. But their test, when Allah gives somebody oppression, their test becomes a test for the whole of the ummah. They are tested for one reaction. The reaction of sabr, the reaction of struggle, of jihad, the reaction of hilm, of forbearing, the reaction of responding back. idfa' billati hiya ahsanu sayyi'ah. Respond back to evil in the best way. That challenge is against them. The responsibility of protecting their families, etc., etc., etc. The rest of us are responsible for helping them. The rest of us are responsible for helping them, for showing them solidarity. The tests are different, they are diverse. In fact, there's 50 people in this room. Every single one of you is tested differently by Allah. Every single one of you has been given different things by Allah. Right? Every single one of you. We are different in height. We are different in color. We are different in body size. We are different in health. Some are healthier than other people. We are different in fitness. We are different in our background. Some have been born into wealthy families. Others have not been born into wealth. We are different in terms of our employment. Right? We are different in terms of the children that we have. Some have very challenging children, difficult to control. Some have less challenging children. All given by Allah. Allah has given us all of this, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to test us in all of it. Every person's test is different. And this is why on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask everybody different questions. He will ask everybody different questions. He will ask us questions about the ni'am, about the bounties that He gave us. Right? ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. You will surely be questioned on the day of judgment with regards to the ni'mah that Allah gave you. Right? And these ni'am Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given are different. Every person's ni'mah is different. Someone has the ni'mah of old age, somebody passes away young. Right? Somebody has a good back, right? Until they're 45, 50. Another person's back gives away at 35. It's a simple ni'mah, right? Simple ni'mah. One person loses his hair at 30, another person keeps it until 50, 60. It's a ni'mah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask about every single one of these ni'mahs on the day of judgment. And therefore, someone who lives in peace has a ni'mah from Allah compared to somebody who lives in war. His situation is different. This person's test is different to that person's test. Everybody will face questions unless we do the right thing. When it comes to the problems of the ummah, it is our duty to learn about, first learn about what we can do to help the situation. We have to learn it. If we don't know, you can't help, right? If you don't know how to help somebody, you can't help. If you don't know first aid, you might kill the person who's just been hit by a car. If you don't know first aid, and you go and you try to help the man on the street who's just been hit by a car, because you don't know, the help that you give him could kill him. It may be that his spine is in a very, very fragile situation. If he is put in the proper recovery position, he will survive. But if somebody pulls him over and takes in his arms, he has a good intention, but he doesn't know first aid, he could kill him. So the first thing is we have to know, we have to understand the situation, we have to know knowledge. Knowledge is important. And our biggest problem is that we have a serious crisis of knowledge when it comes to our brothers and sisters around the world. And we have a serious crisis of knowledge when it comes to the issue of Palestine. Right? We watch the television and we start to believe what the television tells us. Right? If the television tells us something is the issue, we start thinking that that is the issue. Right? And this is a serious problem that we have to deal with. Right now, funny enough, some of you might think, and maybe some people didn't come thinking, oh, why are they talking about Gaza? You know, the fighting is over. Right? But actually, the truth is that this is the time where you have to talk. Because Gaza's problem isn't when they start fighting. Gaza's problem is when they're not fighting. When they're not fighting. The fighting is used to cover what's happening when they're not fighting. Right? So, simple example. They had a 1-month ceasefire. So this is actually a 1-month ceasefire, right? After 30 days, they're going to negotiate more terms. And then after that 30 days, fighting could start again. But what was the first thing that happened after the ceasefire? Does anybody know? What was one of the first things that happened after the ceasefire? Who knows? One of the first things that Israel did. Not blockades. Blockades were always there. What's a new thing that Israel did straight after the ceasefire? Sorry? They took more land. You have a ceasefire, fighting stops, right? So now the world thinks, oh, there's no more children dying, there's no more women being killed, and the hospitals are not full anymore, and etc., etc. People can bury their dead. Because you and I, me and you, think that these things are important, right? These are the most important things, and they are important. And so once that is over, everybody relaxes. And then Israel goes and takes over a massive portion of land. They take over a massive portion of land. And do you know how they take it? This has been happening since the early 20th century. They don't take it, please, can you give us the land? We'll give you, this, that, and the other. No, they come and take it brutally. There are stories of people whose house has been split in half because a court has given an order that an Israeli family has a right to this house. And they'll start by giving half of the house to the Israeli family. The other half will be left with the Palestinians until life becomes impossible for the Palestinian family and they leave themselves. So it's the same house. Half of it has been given to an Israeli family by court order. So, right? But this time, army loge, police loge, shop loge, ordek gor Israeli family the way kise, mortano odikar se tika se, right? Kuno ek argument che ব্যবহার করিয়া, usually it's religious. Religious কোনো একটা argument ব্যবহার করেছে। এই জায়গার উপরে ও 2000 বছর পুরানো আমরা হক আছে। 2000 বছর পুরানো আমরা হক আছে। কারণ আমরা জায়গা খুদাখুদি করে দেখছি, হিস্ট্রি বই পড়িয়া দেখছি যে এই জায়গা আমরা অমুক নবী এক সময় আসলা, অতএব এই জায়গা ইসরায়েলি জায়গা। এই জায়গা হইল বনু ইসরায়েলের জায়গা। আসলে এই জায়গা যতজন এই 2000 বছর পর্যন্ত যতজন এই জায়গা থাকছেন এরা বেআইনি থাকছেন, রাইট? অতএব তারা বাকরি দেওয়া যায়। কোর্ট অর্ডার দিল, কতদিন ধরে আর্মি, পুলিশ, they turn up and they chuck people out, right? But they try to appear fair. বন্দি করবো যে আমরা ইনসাফ করলাম, মাত্র আর অর্ধেক গড়ের অধিকার আছে নাকি অর্ধেকের উপর আর অর্ধেক থাকবো। কিন্তু তারা যে অর্ধেক এই অর্ধেক গড় ঢুকার পরে মানুষের মুখোশে কাছে ফিরব, মানুষের মারা হইব, মানুষের লাইফ একেবারে অসম্ভব করে হইব। সর্বশেষে বাকি গড় সারিও ফিলিস্তিনিয়ারা যাওয়া লাগবে। আমার এক ভাইয়ে আমার থেকে আইয়া কইসেন যে স্মরণ নাই মানুষটাকে আসতে ঘটনাটা একেবারে সত্য। জেরুসালেমও এক ফিলিস্তিনি এক ভদ্রলোক, মুরব্বী এক ভদ্রলোকের সাথে দেখা হয়েছে। You youngsters understand what I'm saying, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's a learn for Bangla. মুরব্বী এক ভদ্রলোক। তো বিশালের কিছু দর্শক হইল, যারা হইলাম ভাই জানাননি আমি কোনো জায়গায় থাকি, আমরা 2 বেডরুমের ঘর, আমরা 14-15 জন থাকি। 2 বেডরুমের ঘর 14-15 জন থাকি। আর যে এলাকা এই ঘর করছে, এই ফ্ল্যাটটা করছে, এই এলাকা খুব মূল্যবান, খুব দামি, মানে কয়েক লক্ষ ডলার আমার অফার করা হয়েছে এই জায়গা। আমি ইসরায়েলি অফার কাছে গেছিলাম, তারা বারবার আমার কাছে পয়সা লইয়া বলে তুমি পয়সা নাও, আপনি যাও, তোমার ফ্যামিলি লাগে বড় এক ঘর দিলাম। তো যারা হইলাম আজ 10-15 বছর হয়ে গেছে আমি এলাকা আমি ঘর দেখছি না। তো ওদের যে বাইক গেছিলাম আমার দেখা হয়েছে হইলাম আপনার কাছে না, আমার তো কত বড় প্রবলেম, আমার 15-20 জন, অন্য কোনো বিকল্প নাই, সাইড বাই দি বিপদ, তারা কারণে লড়াচড়াও যায় না। এক জায়গা থেকে আরো জায়গায় যে আপনি যাইতা এই সুযোগ নেই, যে মনটা কি হন গিয়া হয়তো তারা বাফরখালি যে জায়গা জমিন আগর আছে এটা অলরেডি হয়ে গেছে। তো হইলা ভাই আসলে আমি খুব সহজে যেতাম পারি, পয়সাও পাইমো, দুনিয়ার যে কোনো দেশও গিয়া এই পয়সা লইয়া আমি সেটেল হইতে পারবো, মিশর গিয়ে সেটেল হইতে পারবো, যে কোনো জায়গায় সেটেল হইতে পারবো। আমি যাই না, কারণ আমার মনের মাঝে ও কথা যে আমি সারা উম্মতের পক্ষ থাকি মসজিদুল আকসারে ডিফেন্ড করব। এখানে যদি এই এলাকার সমস্ত মানুষের ইলা পয়সার লালচ করিয়া গড়বাড়ি ছাড়িয়া যায় দিয়ে এই মসজিদুল মুসল্লির কি হইব? মসজিদুল মুসল্লি হইব। আর যদি মসজিদুল মুসল্লি হয় না জানি, তাহলে তারা লাগে মসজিদের টেকওভার করা তেমন কোনো বড় ব্যাপার নাই। তারা সারা দুনিয়ায় বুঝাইব বলি এই মসজিদ আমরা তারা রেডি আগে দেওয়াটা এই মসজিদ মুসল্লি নেই। There's nobody to pray in the masjid. Why should we leave the masjid for the Muslims? এখন পারেন না, কারণ এখন কিছু করলে মাইল লাগি যায়। মুসলমান হলে মিছিল করে, মুসল্লি হল আসল নামাজও মানুষ যায় খুব কম, যদিও এনাফ মানুষের আসলে রেগুলার নামাজ কেউ পড়তে পারেন না, এবং তারা যে ব্রাহ্মণকে বন্ধ করে না, ব্রাহ্মণকে তারা বন্ধ করে না। মসজিদ কমপ্লিটলি তারা কন্ট্রোলে, তারা অনুমতি দেয় মুসলমানরা এখানে ঢুকার, মানে সিকিউরিটি কন্ট্রোল। যদিও মসজিদুল আকসার আপনারা জানেন কিনা, মসজিদুল আকসার যে ওয়াকফ মানে এই মসজিদের মালিকানা কিছু ট্রাস্টি অপরাধ আছে। মসজিদুল আকসার অফিসিয়াল মালিকানা হইল জর্ডানের রয়্যাল ফ্যামিলির হাতে। জর্ডানের রয়্যাল ফ্যামিলির হাতে, জর্ডানের এক প্রিন্স আছে যার দায়িত্বে হইল এই ওয়াকফ। যদিও মালিকানা দায়িত্ব সবকিছু তারা হাতে, কিন্তু কন্ট্রোল হইল ইসরায়েলি হাতে, এবং একটু হইল জুড়ে কন্ট্রোল। এই কন্ট্রোলরে তারা সারা দুনিয়ায় কিভাবে বোঝায় যে আমরা কন্ট্রোল করা লাগে সিকিউরিটি, আমরা যদি কন্ট্রোল করি না আমরা বোমা দিব, ও কথার ভিত্তিতে তারা এই সমস্ত জায়গায় দৌড় আছে সিকিউরিটি। যাই হোক, আরো ঘটনা, দিস ইজ ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট স্টোরি, রাইট? মানে আমার নিজের ব্যক্তিগতভাবে রাউন্ডগুলো আমার হওয়া হয়েছে, আমি যাতে মানে এই ক্যাম্পেইনটা সাপোর্ট করতে পারি। দিস ইজ ভেরি ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট ফর আওয়ার এল্ডার্স। I'm going to say this in Bangla, and all of you to try to pay attention. I'll try and repeat it. So a round table is a round table ta অনুষ্ঠিত করা হয়েছে অর্গানাইজেশন নাম জৈতুন, নাম জৈতুন আর একটা অর্গানাইজেশন। তো রাউন্ড টেবল বাঁকা কিছু মানুষ, তার মধ্যে এক ভদ্রলোক ওয়েস্ট ব্যাংকের এক ফার্মার, কৃষক, জৈতুন ফার্মিং করেন। জৈতুন ফার্মিং, জৈতুনের গাছর বাগান আছে তানোর, ওটা থেকে জৈতুন ফলানি ওইগুলো বেচা। তো এক পর্যায়ে যে সময় ইরাকের যুদ্ধ হয়, ইরাকের যুদ্ধের বিরুদ্ধে বড় মিছিল, 2 মিলিয়ন মানুষের মিছিল করলাম। ইরাকের যুদ্ধ যখন হয় তখন মানে ও টাইমও হতা করা